Good evening, fellow anti-government extremists. Did anybody see the Arizona Republic article today? No, of course you didn't, but I did. I looked it up, and of course, as is custom these days, it has to start with, the Southern Poverty Law Center says a bunch of hateful, wacky, crazy extremists, so on and so forth. And so I'm supposed to talk to you tonight about school boards and school choice, but I'm going to go off script a little bit first, and I want to address the press. So, ladies, feel free to talk amongst yourselves. I'll give you a topic. Gender-affirming care is neither affirming nor care. So discuss. I know, to the press, I know what you're thinking. You're wondering, what is this rabbi doing speaking to a group of Nazis? And so, first of all, I'm not a rabbi. I'm just a Jew with a beard and a funny hat. But I know why you're asking the question. You're asking the question because a lot of your colleagues have been lying. Lying about Moms for Liberty, lying about the wonderful group of patriotic, joyful warriors in this room. And it really upsets me. But I know what you're saying. Well, wait, they're book banners, right? They're book banners, just like the Nazis. Ladies, ban any good books lately? What's your success rate on book banning? 0%, right? Okay, all the books that get us upset, whether it's Lawn Boy or Genderqueer or what have you, you can get every single one of those on Amazon. You can get any single one of those at Barnes & Noble, at your local public library. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about curation, age-appropriate curation in public school libraries for children. Now, if something is not in one of those libraries, that means it's banned. Then 99.99% of all books that have ever been published are banned, okay? We are not talking about Romeo and Juliet, right? Everybody agrees Romeo and Juliet belongs in the school. Everybody agrees Hustler does not. And then we can have a reasonable debate about where to draw the line. Tiffany Justice said, we're not looking to ban any books. Our moms are saying write the book, publish the book, print the book, sell the book wherever you'd like to sell it, but don't put it in a public school library if it has explicit sexual content in it. I mean, real, wacky, extremist stuff. But you're saying, well, but wait a second, but they quoted Hitler, right? There was one chapter in Indiana, and they had a publication, and they quoted Hitler. You and the press should know that quoting is not the same thing as endorsing, right? You quote Donald Trump all the time. If you quote Donald Trump, does that make you a Republican? No. If I quote Joe Biden, does that make me senile? No. So, and what was the quote? What was the quote? The Hitler quote was, "He alone who owns the youth gains the future." And they said, well, it seemed like they were endorsing this idea. Really? What's that quote over there? The motto of this group is, we don't co-parent with the government. That is like the exact opposite of the Hitler quote. It was very clear to anybody with half a brain that what they were doing was giving an example of something that they opposed. Now, the national leadership of Moms for Liberty did put out an apology saying parents are passionate about protecting future generations from tyranny, but Hitler did not need to be quoted to make that point. Granted, we could use with a lot less Holocaust imagery and comparisons these days on all sides, and so it's a point well taken. But I want to make one last point to the media about this, okay? Because sometimes they're called Nazis because they oppose CRT, right? Both, and now this is really going to blow the minds of the press, both Moms for Liberty and the proponents of CRT are the opposite of the Nazis, but in very different and fundamentally important ways, okay? So what was the Nazi view on race? The Nazis believe that race is one of the most important characteristics that defines your identity, that race is something real. In their view, it's biological, it's immutable, it's not just some social construct like gender. And the Nazis said there are good races and there are bad races, okay? The good race is namely the white race, the bad races, namely everybody else. And so the Nazis taught people to hate blacks and gypsies and especially Jews. Now the proponents of CRT, they try to be the opposite of the Nazis, but really they end up being the flip side of the coin, because they also say that race is one of the most important things that defines your identity. And while they don't exactly claim that there are good races or bad races, they too often divide us into categories, oppressor versus oppressed, based solely on our skin color. And so, all too often, CRT teaches people to have ill will towards certain groups, including whites, Asians, and especially Jews. Meanwhile, Moms for Liberty takes a very different approach. They hold that all men and women are created equal because they are created in God's image. And they believe that people should be judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Again, real radical extremist stuff. And so that answers the question. That's why I'm proud to speak to Moms for Liberty. Okay, is my time up? Do I have time to actually get into? So what I actually wanted to talk to you about tonight, though, is this question of school boards and school choice, right? Do we put our efforts into going and taking over the school boards? There's all sorts of crazy stuff going on in the schools. We got to take back the school boards. Or do we say, you know what? The government school system, it's too far gone. Let's just abandon it. Let's go build our own private schools, micro schools, homeschool communities that reflect our values, right? And so there's this tension there. And my answer to this question, school boards or school choice, is a resounding, unequivocal yes. No. So, like the great philosopher Yogi Berra said, when you come to the fork in the road, take it. Now, to those who say that district schools are too far gone, we can't abandon them. Even here in Arizona, which has the most robust school choice environment in the entire country, right? About 20% of kids are in charter schools, 7 or 8% of kids are in private schools or homeschooling. You still have, about 7 out of 10 kids are in the public school system. We cannot abandon those children. We owe it to them to fight for them. And frankly, the future of our country is at stake. We can't surrender another generation of children to the radical ideology that is infecting our government school system. But the other side says, you know what? We need to just go all in on the school boards, and school choice is a distraction. When people have an exit option, it sort of turns the temperature down. We need to be like those Spanish conquistadors that burnt the boats, right? So you have no choice but to fight. And I appreciate that, I can understand it, but I just think that tactic, it asks too much of families, right? We're talking here about children, not soldiers. And some government schools are just too far gone, and the only hope that parents have is to have that exit option. We can't expect that parents are going to be sacrificing their children at the altar of wokeness just to save another school or two. And so we really have to do both. It's both and, not either or. Fortunately, though, these two tactics actually do go hand in hand. And here's why. There was a great social scientist, Alberto Hirschman, who talked about exit and voice. And at first, he actually thought that these were sort of opposite strategies, and then he realized later on in life that they went together, right? If you have if you had a restaurant, you have two options. If the restaurant starts to decline in quality, you can either speak to the manager and tell them that something's going wrong, or you can leave and go somewhere else. But what happens when there's only one restaurant in town? When they have a captive audience, when they know you have no other choices, you have nowhere else to go, you don't have the same sort of leverage that you have if the people that you're speaking to at the school board know that if you're not happy, you can go somewhere else, take your child and their money with them. And so actually, there's some synergy for these two strategies. So again, we need to do both. I'll wrap up because I see we're running a little late. Taking back control of school boards and pushing for school choice, fine. There is no more effective organization in the country today fighting to take back our schools and to advance and defend education freedom than Moms for Liberty. So I'm incredibly grateful for all the work that you do, for inviting me here to speak. May God bless you, and may God bless the work of your hands. Have a good night. Thank you.